Everyone could see his talent. To lose such an amazing person was just devastating.
She explains that her husband may be alive or dead. She doesn't know because she didn't check.
She was speaking in a very matter-of-fact way, very monotone. This was shocking.
She is concerned that she's losing everything.
I'm not scared.
It wasn't just sex with a stripper anymore. He was supporting someone else.
The question was, did she plan to do it?
I couldn't live with my heart being broken every day.
January 1st, 2009, Pomona, California. Just 2 hours into the new year, 21-year-old Jessica Davidson receives a phone call.
She's leaving a New Year's Eve party with her boyfriend when she gets an unexpected phone call from her mother.
Her mom's name is Adrienne Davidson. So Adrienne calls her daughter Jessica to come to the house. And she says, I will tell you when you get here, I need you to just come.
Jessica and her boyfriend rush to the Davidson home, where Adrienne lives with her husband, Ezra, and Jessica's younger brother.
When they got to the house, Adrienne was outside in the driveway waiting for them.
And she says, okay, I need you to take your brother to your grandparents' house.
She makes a second request.
Adrienne announces that she needs the boyfriend to take her somewhere. Jessica asks where, and in response, Adrienne says the police station.
Confused but seeing her mom's urgency, Jessica goes inside to wake her brother.
It's kind of spooky, kind of weird. She's not sure what's happening.
Adrienne Renee Pert was born in 1962 in West Orange, New Jersey. She grew up in an upper-middle-class household with her parents and 3 siblings.
Adrienne's dad was a well-to-do dentist. She had 2 younger sisters by the same mom, and then they also had an older half-sister. For whatever reason, it seemed to be that Adrienne had somewhat of a difficult place in her family.
Adrienne's dad would question her intelligence. He would call her stupid. He would say she was sexually promiscuous. He would take a switch and spank her with things he didn't do to the other daughters.
After high school, her father sent her to Spelman College, which is an HBCU located in Atlanta, Georgia.
One of the things he did was make it really clear to her that even though he was sending her to college, his goal for her really was not so much that she get an education, but that she find a husband.
True to form, her father set up a blind date for her once she got down to Atlanta with the son of one of his college buddies. A gentleman named Ezra Davidson, who was a college student at nearby Spelman College in Atlanta.
Ezra came from Detroit, where his father was a successful OBGYN.
Ezra grew up in a very affluent household. His parents divorced at a relatively early age. He lived primarily with his mom.
There was an instant connection.
These are people who have a lot in common. They have these family backgrounds that go along with each other. They've had similar ambitions. They're both smart.
But as they got to know each other, it was what they didn't have in common that drew them closer.
He's described as very charismatic, very charming, gregarious, outgoing, pretty social. Whereas in Adrienne is described as the inverse, very to herself and a homebody.
she experiences happiness for the first time. She was deeply in love with him.
The couple dated for 2 years. Then, the happiness Adrian waited so long for disappeared in a matter of weeks.
In junior year, Adrian gets overwhelmed academically and drops out. And then soon after, Ezra breaks up with her. It was the night of a party that they had planned to have at Adrian's apartment. And even though Ezra has broken up with Adrian, he decides to still go ahead with the party, and Adrian is allowing it.
This is absolutely devastating to her. And, you know, we can all relate to being upset over a breakup, but this is, in some respects, I think, life-altering for her at the time. Adrian goes into her bedroom and takes an entire bottle of sleeping pills and slits her wrist in an attempt to kill herself over this breakup.
Her sister finds her and engages 911, takes her to the hospital. She's held there for observation.
Adrian is released the next day.
This does speak to a level of emotional dependence that is concerning. And it's concerning because it suggests that Adrian feels like she can't live without somebody else. And that's a dangerous place to be.
After the suicide attempt, Ezra comes back and cares for Adrian.
I do think that he felt on some level responsible for that, and then responsible for her.
Within a month, they were back to being a happy couple. During Ezra's senior year of college in 1984, the couple ends up getting married.
That same year, Ezra graduated magna cum laude with a degree in accounting. He easily secured a job at a top-ranked firm. A few years later, Adrian gave birth to Jessica.
She was a housewife. She was very devoted to Ezra. She moved with him for his work. They lived for a time in Austria.
They moved back to the United States, end up in California. Their son is born. Things are kind of trucking along.
Ezra decided to switch gears, making what he hoped would be a lucrative move from accounting to technology.
I met Ezra through my ex-husband who had a software company, and Ezra was an employee working in business development. He just picked it up very quickly and understood the technology and was able to work with clients to get them what they needed. He was just such a charismatic guy and vivacious and just drew people in, but he was also extremely intelligent. At that point, everyone could see his talent and his ability to work with customers and bring in new business. So that's why he was invited to join the new company as a partner.
This venture was one of the first of its kind to figure out how to put digital media on the internet.
For almost a decade, the company flourished.
In the early 2000s, it was almost like the Wild West of technology. And we reached a point in the company where we had grown significantly. We had some really strong contracts, and we decided that it was time to exit.
In September 2007, Ezra and his partners sold the company for a sizable profit. The windfall marked a new chapter for Ezra.
My ex-husband and Ezra were spending their social time together. They were going out to LA quite a bit. They were entertaining people at a higher level than prior with bottle service and spending more money because they had this newfound money, I believe. And so it was a happy time for them.
By late 2008, Jessica was in college. Adrienne devoted her time to raising her son and taking care of Ezra. The entire Davidson family was enjoying Ezra's success.
He was able to put a lot of money down as a down payment on what he thought was his dream house in Pomona.
With a new home and a flush bank account, everything seemed to be going good for the family.
But the early morning hours of New Year's Day 2009 bring uncertainty. At Adrienne's request, Jessica wakes her younger brother and ushers the sleepy child into her car.
Jessica is not sure what's happening, but she complies.
Jessica gets in the car with her brother and starts heading to the grandparents' house, and the boyfriend starts driving Adrienne to the police station.
She explains that her husband may be alive or dead. She doesn't know because she didn't check, nor did she call 911.
Given the nature of her claim, investigators dispatch patrol officers to the Davidson home, hopeful they will find Adrienne's husband, Ezra, alive. Both Adrienne and Jessica's boyfriend are told to stay put.
The police, not knowing all of the details, they tell him that they're going to be impounding his car, as well as taking Adrienne into custody because of the confession that she's made.
Jessica's boyfriend calls her and says, you got to come get me because they're impounding my car. And Jessica's like, what is going on?
He's not sure what's going on. He explains that the police took her mother back for questioning.
Jessica rushes to the station. Meanwhile, police officers arrive at the Davidson home.
The officers find Ezra Davidson lying motionless under the covers in the master bedroom. He is dead due to a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. Adrienne was telling the truth. The 9mm shell casing is found behind the bed, and the 9mm handgun itself is found in a box in the closet. A tag on the side of the box indicates that the gun was sold to Adrienne Davidson on December 15th, 2008. The evidence at the crime scene supports Adrienne Davidson's story, but nothing explains why.
Back at the station, investigators put that question to Adrienne.
She was speaking in a very matter-of-fact way, very monotone. You maybe wouldn't expect someone to have that calm of a demeanor considering what had taken place.
Adrienne doesn't offer up details as to what led to the shooting, only that she is responsible.
She shot him, she put the gun up, she cleaned up, she got dressed, she made sure that her son did not go into the room, she closed the door, she called Jessica, and she was driven to the police station so she can confess. That is totally inconsistent with what a murderer does. After a murderer commits a crime, a murderer tries to stage the scene to make it seem like they did nothing wrong. And the last place they go is they go to the police department.
She could have concocted any story she wanted to about what had happened. They'd gotten some kind of a struggle, some kind of a fight, the gun accidentally went off. She doesn't do any of that.
Adrienne's 21-year-old daughter Jessica arrives. By now, she is in a full-blown panic.
As an investigator, you're going to read the situation and make some tactical decisions as to how you want the interview with Jessica to play out. Do you want to lead with the fact that he's dead and see how she reacts? Do you want to hold that back and see how she plays to see if she admits that she's aware of it or not admit to it? So in this case, it sounds like they decided to just come straight at her and explain the situation. First thing they do is break the news to her that her father is dead.
And at that point, Jessica finds out that her mom has confessed to shooting her dad. which is the last thing that Jessica was expecting. Jessica is just reeling with this.
Despite her shock, investigators hope Jessica can shed light on what transpired between her mother and father.
She does talk to the police and she tells them about what she knows about their parents' relationship.
Jessica,
This person that he's involved with is 20 years old, basically a year younger than their daughter. And so for her, it's like, you know, the world is crashing down.
Adrienne was very surprised. She was very shocked. She was very upset.
For detectives, the revelation offers potential insight into Adrienne's actions.
as an investigator, and from a legal standpoint, you don't ever have to prove motive, but finding out what the motive is something that gets the investigators' ears to perk up, and they're gonna try and pull on that thread to see how far it goes.
Investigators continue to question Jessica. She admits that she too was upset. Her father had been far less generous when it came to her.
Jessica is like, I'm driving a junk car, and my dad isn't helping me financially. She feels disrespected. She feels unloved that her dad is choosing to put a 20-year-old girl above her as his daughter.
Jessica and Adrienne discussed what to do next.
Jessica asked her, you know, what do you want to do about this? I think maybe you should just go get a divorce. And her mom said, you know, I'll just figure it out, I'll handle it.
A few days later, Adrienne took her findings to Ezra.
According to Jessica, her mother confronted her father about the affair, and he admitted to it. He explained that he had no intention of ending the affair, and he even went so far as to give Adrienne an ultimatum.
He basically tells her she is number two, she being Adrienne, and the young lady is number one.
He told her to either accept that he was going to be having affairs or he would divorce her.
Adrienne did not want to get a divorce because not only religiously that it was not something that she agreed with, but also her identity and her attachment to her husband was a huge deal. She didn't see herself being by herself and not with her husband.
In the following days, Jessica says her mother called her incessantly.
This is very atypical of their relationship. Her daughter Jessica describes her as somebody who was, in some respects, emotionally distant, not somebody who would talk about her problems, and yet all of a sudden her mom is talking to Jessica every day, calling her multiple times.
After several days of agonizing over the situation, Adrienne decides that she doesn't want a divorce and that she's willing to allow Ezra to have his affairs.
Adrienne feels like she doesn't have any options. It doesn't necessarily sit right with her, but she tries, right? She's trying to say, okay, you know what, it's fine. I still have my home. I still have my life. I still have my husband. I still have my children. This can be okay.
Jessica says that on New Year's Eve, the whole family gathered at the Davidson home for dinner.
Jessica's there with her boyfriend, and they have a delightful dinner. Everything is going very well. After dinner, Jessica and her boyfriend leave to go to a New Year's Eve party.
Jessica and her boyfriend left around 9 p.m. Several hours later, she received the call from Adrienne asking her to return home. Now, Jessica is demanding to know what happened after she left.
Jessica says to the police, I am not leaving this police station until I talk to my mom. And so they allow her to go in and talk to her mom.
There's no downside from the investigator standpoint to letting this conversation take place because they know that it's going to be recorded, and even if you tell someone it's going to be recorded once they get into the emotional exchange between a mother and a daughter about killing a father.
Hours after the shooting death of businessman Ezra Davidson, his 21-year-old daughter confronts his alleged killer, her mother, Adrian Davidson. Investigators listen in.
What happened? You know what happened. What? No, I don't, Mom. I don't want to know, but what I need to know is, like, what set you off?
Up to that point, Adrian had been very calm, very matter-of-fact, but when she spoke to her daughter in the interview room, she really broke down.
I'm sorry. Oh, no. I'm not mad at you, Mom. I love your father. It just broke my heart.
But it's where the conversation goes next that really catches the attention of investigators.
I mean, is this what you meant when you told me you were going to take care of things on the first?
For the investigators, their ears are going to perk up when they get this tidbit where Adrian tells Jessica she's going to take care of everything on the first. And here we are on the first, and the husband's dead. To the police, this sure sounds like what she's saying is she meant to kill her husband on New Year's Day. But Adrian doesn't answer the question directly.
Jessica, kept asking her mother, why did you decide to do this? You should have just left him.
I got scared. Scared of what? I was supposed to be your father. I just love your father so much. Mom, we would have figured a way. We would have taken care of things. I couldn't live with my heart being broken every day. It just broke my heart. I know, Mom.
Following the conversation, Jessica and her boyfriend are allowed to leave. However, Adrian is placed under arrest.
The investigators are left trying to figure out, do they arrest her for first-degree murder or manslaughter? And whether or not this is a premeditated crime or whether it's a crime of passion. And they've got some information that suggests she's in this emotional state, but other pieces of information that are explaining that she's making very clear and calculated decisions.
Hoping to find out, investigators keep digging. They track down the gun dealer who sold Adrian the gun on December 15th. One day after she had learned that her husband was having an affair.
The gun dealer explains that Adrian told him that she was buying a weapon for self-defense.
She tells him her husband goes on business trips and she needs to feel safe.
But Adrian didn't leave with the gun.
The law in California states that there's a 10-day waiting period after you purchase the gun between when you make the purchase and when you can actually pick it up. And it's to prevent people from committing rash acts like suicide or murder.
She still goes and picks the gun up on December 29th. She comes home and she puts the gun in her closet. Doesn't tell anybody that she has the gun.
Was Adrian really looking to protect herself? Or was she planning her husband's murder? Investigators look at the couple's finances. They learn that in the 2 years since he sold his company, Ezra enjoyed a new lifestyle thanks to the hefty profit.
He goes through a period where he just wants to party and go out and have a good time. And he's celebrating, he's taking other people out to dinner, he's spending money on his employees. And it seems like Adrian is taking more and more of a backseat in their relationship.
Ezra got caught up in the excitement of having all this money, and he and my ex were going out and celebrating and drawing a lot of attention. I think in his mind, he was just enjoying his life and having fun and spending money.
By the end of 2008, Ezra's spending caught up with him.
Investigators determine that the family has fallen behind in their mortgage payments and are in risk of losing their house.
A fact investigators believe could have fueled Adrian's anger over the affair.
Yet, with all these financial difficulties, Ezra is still finding a way to make the payments of his mistress's rent.
He is spending all this money on somebody while their family was suffering. He's going to continue to do this. She's angry.
The question was, did she kill him as a result of provocation, or did she plan to do it?
Almost a month after the murder, investigators believe they have the answer.
On January 29, 2009, Adrian is charged with first-degree murder. Now, prosecutors must hope
Homicide, a family member of somebody who has been murdered in your family. And then, of course, when it's one family member murdering another, it's a double trauma. When we're talking about a situation where there's a violent death, particularly among family members, not only do we deal with the pain, with the loss, but there's so many other emotions that go into it. There's oftentimes rage, and there's anguish, and there's oftentimes a sense of secondary guilt. You know, it's like people feel like, I'm so isolated. Nobody's been through this like I have. That's why we see trauma passed down from generation to generation when it's untreated. It is an automatic process. It's when it's not treated and dealt with that.
In February 2010, Adrian Davidson is on trial for fatally shooting her husband of 24 years, Ezra. She is charged with first-degree murder.
It shocked me when they refused to offer her a manslaughter. It was an unlawful killing, clearly, but it was a manslaughter.
The prosecution make their case.
they point out that Adrian went out and bought a handgun the day after she found out that her husband was cheating on her.
She had to decide, I'm going to buy a gun. She had never had a gun before. She had to research what type of gun she should get. She had to locate a gun dealer. She had to talk to the gun dealer. And she put the gun in her room where she could use it.
Adrian's attorneys present their side.
In Adrian's defense, they didn't contest that she actually committed the killing. But what they were saying is that it took place in the heat of passion, that it wasn't a premeditated murder.
Jessica takes the stand, testifying about an incident that happened when the family lived in Austria.
Jessica remembers her mother getting upset with her father after finding out that he'd been having an affair with a stripper.
And her response is to take all of his clothes, and she cuts holes in all of his business shirts, and she also cuts out his face from a lot of their family photographs.
Ezra retaliated.
The daughter said she remembers her father dragging her mother down a flight of stairs by her hair. The daughter testified to how her father was abusive verbally and how he would beat her mother. Once they moved back to the United States, the beatings, the humiliations continued. He was constantly having affairs, constantly beating her, constantly humiliating her.
The defense calls who they hope will be their star witness, Adrian Davidson. Adrian testifies about her marriage.
She just wanted someone to take care of her, to value her, to validate her. And the truth of it is that Ezra was not always unkind. There were a lot of times where Ezra was glowing and made her feel good. And so for Adrian, there was a benefit to her being the wife of Ezra and continuing. And that benefit allowed her to compartmentalize or become apathetic to the things that weren't working well.
But in light of Ezra's latest affair, her whole world felt uncertain.
It wasn't just sex with a stripper anymore. He was supporting someone else.
She is concerned that she's losing everything. Everything. She's losing her emotional security, her financial security. I mean, everything that she uses to base her identity on.
She tells the jury that on the night Ezra died, she made an impassioned plea to her husband.
She asked Ezra, look, I just want to have you New Year's Eve and New Year's Day without the mistress being involved. That's all I'm asking for right now. I'm going to accept her, but it's the beginning of the year. I just want to start it off with you.
Ezra agreed.
Ezra brought dinner and champagne home with him and spent time with Jessica and her boyfriend, who were headed out later to a party with their friends.
Jessica and her boyfriend left at around 7. And then Adrian and Ezra had from what all accounts was a nice evening together.
Eventually, their young son goes to bed, and it's just the two of them.
They drank champagne, they slept together, they also watched New Year's festivities on TV. When the time came for the countdown for the new year, Adrian was excited to share that moment with Ezra.
They watched the ball drop in New York. She was very much in love with him that night and very much enjoying that night. And she asked her husband, could he stay there? Could they have not only New Year's Eve, but New Year's Day also? And he told her no. New Year's Day will be for his girlfriend.
Crestfallen, she went to bed and waited for Ezra to join her. But he never did.
She came back downstairs to see what was happening with Ezra.
She sees that he's on his phone texting his girlfriend. She's assuming that he's texting the girlfriend.
And I think that just became so symbolic for her. It is the start of a new year, and this is how it started.
Adrian says she returned to the bedroom.
She is just stewing over this, and she just has all this emotion. He comes up, and she tries to talk to him again. I'm just asking you for a few things. On the holidays, don't talk to your mistress. I mean, just reserve the holidays for our family and make sure that you're financially responsible for our family and for our children. And he just says, no, it's your problem. Deal with it on your own. I'm not making any promises to you.
He turned over, went to sleep. She was devastated. She went in the closet almost like on remote control, got the gun.
Adrian Davidson is on trial for the first-degree murder of her husband, Ezra. She testifies that on the night of his death, she retrieved the gun from the closet with the intention of taking her own life.
She starts thinking about the logistics of it, the details of it, like where is she going to shoot herself? She decides to kill herself in bed.
She wants him to find her laying next to him, dead.
She held the gun to her head. She put the barrel of the gun in her mouth, all while he's there sleeping soundly.
She's upset and he's sleeping like there's no care in the world, like a baby. And it's too much for her.
Before she knew what she was doing, she turned the gun on her husband and pulled the trigger.
Just instantly, she changed the gun and shot him in the head.
The defense closes, arguing that the only thing Adrian planned was her own death.
She goes there to purchase a handgun with the intention to take her own life. And why do I say I'm very strong and clear on that? Because all of her life, at various parts, she's been suicidal. She actually attempted suicide when Ezra broke it off. What you don't have with her is a history of violence at all.
Will the jury agree?
The case goes to the jury on March 9th, 2010. It only takes the jury 3.5 hours to deliberate. They come back with a guilty verdict. They find 47-year-old Adrian Davidson guilty of first-degree murder.
By law in California, first-degree murder carries a sentence of 25 years to life. The sentencing enhancement of using a gun in the commission of the murder also carries an additional 25 years. So the judge didn't have any ability to give a sentence, less or greater than 50 years to life.
Adrian's incarceration leaves their son to be raised by family members.
She should have divorced him, but she chose something that was horrible and unimaginable, and it just ruined so many lives.
Cases like this showcase that we can never tell what is the perfect storm of events and factors that can cause someone to lash out or act out of character.
The hardest part of losing Ezra was just knowing what a great person he was. I knew, that he had made mistakes and things got, crazy, but I don't believe he deserved to be killed for that.
She had a legitimate concern for the welfare of this neighbor.
Police make their way into the residence to do a welfare check on the homeowner, 50-year-old Shanita Glanville. But after they enter the home, the officers are shocked by what they find.
They find the man on the floor, dead.
He was shot once in the head, once in the torso, and once in the arm.
A woman who they believe to be Shanita is lying just a few feet away from the male victim.
They find her lying face down, 2 shots through the rear of her head.
She was killed execution style.
Who would want to gun down these 2 victims? And why?
People, they were shocked. They were confused. This kind of thing doesn't happen in that town.
As police try to make sense of this double homicide, they'll uncover a tangled web of deceit, where one woman's desire to please her man put those she loved in danger.
She was willing to do whatever it took to make sure her man was happy.
Chanel Cunningham was known for her warm personality and impeccable taste in fashion.
Chanel was beautiful. She was vibrant. Her smile lit up a room.
The fashionista was determined to own her own store one day.
Chanel was willing to work hard to have a store of her own. That was her dream.
At a party one night in February of 1998, Chanel crossed paths with someone who seemed like he could make all her dreams come true. Swanky businessman Maurice Phillips.
Maurice was a handsome, just brown-skinned young man, and she is absolutely awestruck by him.
He had swagger like nobody else. She was amazed by him.
Instantly, there's this connection.
Maurice and Chanel talked for hours.
He was smart. He had his own business. Maurice was everything that she had been looking for.
What she saw in him was someone who was just as driven as she was, just as ambitious. They were a perfect match.
From that night on, Chanel and Maurice were inseparable.
Once Maurice Phillips and Chanel started dating, things got intense.
Chanel felt like she hit the jackpot. She finally found a man that she could depend on, a man that could take care of things.
Chanel had found everything that she was looking for in Maurice. She was absolutely enamored by him.
If Chanel wanted a Prince Charming, Maurice stepped into that role immediately.
Maurice showered Chanel with exotic trips and a life of luxury.
Maurice, he gave the appearance of perfection. He took her to romantic places around the world and gave her what she thought she would never see.
Maurice and Chanel, they were doing it all. They went to Super Bowls, Celebrity All-Star Weekend basketball games.
Chanel not only fell in love with Maurice, she also fell in love with that lifestyle. And we're talking about a lifestyle of fancy cars, big houses.
In the summer of 2001, Maurice also made Chanel's dream of starting her own boutique come true.
He worked with her to start her own business, and just as he had done for himself, she was really inspired by him.
Because of Maurice, Chanel is really walking in the life that she's envisioned for herself.
But little did Chanel know that behind all of the bling, there was more to Maurice and his small business than met the eye.
Maurice was really looking for someone he could trust, and he saw that in Chanel.
Whatever he was doing, she became his ride or die.
June 26, 2002. Detectives have just arrived at the scene of a brutal double homicide at a residence in Winmore, Pennsylvania. The homeowner, Shanita Glanville, and a male victim have been found shot to death.
She had been killed execution style, 2 shots in the back of her head.
The man was shot once in the head, once in the arm, and in the torso as well.
Officers informed detectives that the male victim is Shanita's godson, Dane King, and that they suspect the murders occurred around 24 hours prior.
The police learned from neighbors that Dane King had just came down from Philadelphia to help Shanita with some computer issues.
Detectives believe the assailant wasn't after Dane, but his godmother.
The shooter probably didn't expect somebody else to be there.
It's a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
But that's not the only reason detectives suspect Shanita Glanville was the killer's main target.
They knew Shanita was an informant.
Shanita had been working with detectives in their investigation of a local drug ring. And it seems the drug ring may have found out.
Shanita was ratting them out. They could have wanted to silence Shanita for good.
The hunt for Shanita and Dane's killer is on, and police think they know just who they're looking for. But what they don't yet know is that there's another suspect at the center of this brutal slaying. One whose loyalty veered towards love over friendship.
She would do anything for him. She got herself and her friends so engrossed in this that there was really no way out.
Finally reached the point that she always dreamed she could be at.
But soon, a friend would threaten the lifestyle that Chanel had grown to love. And shots would ring out.
Chanel was ready to do whatever it took to keep Maurice safe, to keep her family safe, and keep them together.
June 26, 2002. Windmore detectives are investigating the brutal double homicide of Shanita Glanville and Dane King.
They find her with 2 shots to the rear of her head.
Next to Shanita is her godson, Dane King. He's found with multiple gunshots to the body.
Detectives believe Shanita's godson was an innocent bystander, and that Shanita was the targeted hit.
Shanita was working with the feds, working up a case against this immense drug operation.
It was a major cocaine empire that was spreading throughout the Northeast.
Shanita was ratting them out. They could have wanted to silence Shanita for good.
Shanita had started working with law enforcement just 1 month earlier, after her home was raided by federal agents for suspicion of money laundering.
They're looking for W-2 forms, tax forms. They've confiscated everything.
In order to avoid jail time, Shanita jumped at the chance to make a deal with law enforcement.
Shanita was very interested in working with the FBI agent, to better her situation. She pretty much started at the beginning and told them everything.
Shanita told them she had been working for Maurice Phillips, who was already on investigators' radar for drugs.
Maurice was a dangerous man.
He's involved in some really bad stuff and with some really bad people.
Detectives know that if Maurice found out Shanita was a rat, he would have wanted revenge. But before police can officially pin the double homicide on Maurice, they'll need cold, hard proof.
They're looking for paperwork, they're looking for documents, they're looking for the money trail.
However, it soon becomes evident that Maurice couldn't have been the one who pulled the trigger.
At the time of the crime, Maurice was at a luxury restaurant, which could be verified by surveillance cameras.
He had a rock-solid alibi.
Detectives know that just because Maurice didn't pull the trigger doesn't mean he's innocent. They wade through Maurice's financial records and see that he withdrew a large sum of cash on the same day as the murders.
Maurice could have set it up. It's a classic kind of gangland style hit. Murder for hire.
And within Maurice's phone records, detectives find a clue that just might lead them to a potential hitman. They see that on the day of the crime, Maurice made a flurry of phone calls to a single number.
He calls his cousin in Tennessee numerous times.
Detectives identify Maurice's cousin as 31-year-old Bryant Patterson. And from looking at Bryant's credit card transactions, it appears he made a quick round trip to Philadelphia in the days before and after the murders.
The cousin, not living in the Philadelphia area, was the best person to come in, get the job done, and go back home. Less likely to be a suspect because he's not from the area.
When detectives reach out to their counterparts in Tennessee for assistance with locating Bryant, they're met with a surprise.
Bryant was arrested in Tennessee on a gun charge, unrelated to this criminal activity in the Philadelphia area.
Detectives travel down to Tennessee to speak with Bryant. In an interrogation room, they're pleased to find that their suspect is willing to talk.
Bryant wanted to make a deal with the police.
Bryant admits that he's the one who gunned down Shanita and Dane.
He said, "I'm your shooter. I'm the one that did the killing."
Bryant was spilling the beans.
But Bryant isn't going down alone.
Chanel loved Maurice. Love makes you do crazy things sometimes.
She lost her best friend because she was at the point where she would do anything for a man.
Working with the feds, and we're working up a case against Maurice, and this is the reason why he wanted Shanita eliminated.
But before detectives can take down Maurice Phillips, they need cold, hard proof of their theory. Luckily, they're now sitting down in a Tennessee interrogation room with someone who can help. Maurice's cousin, Bryant Patterson.
Bryant actually confessed to being the murderer. He pulled the trigger.
Bryant confirms he carried out the crime at his cousin's behest.
Bryant Patterson tells investigators that he didn't know Shanita personally. His cousin, Maurice, commissioned him to do a hit, and Maurice offered him $18,000 for the murder.
Bryant tells detectives it all started a few weeks before, on June 24th.
He got a phone call from his cousin. His cousin told him to come to Philly so they could take care of a problem.
Bryant says he made the drive up to Philly right away. And once he got there, Maurice filled him in.
Maurice informed Bryant that Shanita needed to be taken care of.
Maurice told Bryant that Shanita was a rat and she needed to be silenced before she took the entire organization down.
He said, you need to help eliminate this problem.
Maurice gives him a .45 caliber gun.
Maurice gave Bryant the address and told him, go take care of the snitch.
Bryant tells police that Maurice had carefully covered every detail.
Maurice wanted to be as far away from this crime as possible.
He's going to be at a restaurant where a lot of people can see him.
Bryant then gives authorities a play-by-play of what happened on the night of June 25th.
He parked at a local business down the street from Shanita's home.
Bryant opened the door and crept inside, with Shanita none the wiser.
As soon as he sees her, he pulls out the .45, tells her to get on the ground, and shoots her in the back of the head twice. Execution style.
Bryant says he didn't know Shanita's godson was visiting, but he couldn't leave any witnesses.
Dane King immediately is scared. He starts trying to fight Bryant.
He was fighting for his life. Bryant turned the gun on Dane, and he emptied the chamber.
Once both victims were dead, Bryant called Maurice.
He called Maurice Phillips on the phone and told him, it's done. I did it.
Bryant tells detectives that Maurice then gave him instructions to collect his earnings.
Maurice informed Bryant that you go and meet this person at this location and they're going to pay you $16,000.
But Bryant says the location of the second portion of his earnings took him by surprise.
Maurice tells Bryant he can go to the boutique that he and Chanel own and he can get the rest of the money.
At this admission, detectives' ears perk up. Maurice's girlfriend has been on their radar ever since their talks with Shanita.
Shanita and Chanel were the best of friends. So much so that they were family.
According to Shanita, Chanel was in charge of recruitment for her man's drug empire. And Chanel was the one who had convinced Shanita to get involved in the first place.
Chanel explained that it was her role in Maurice's business to keep an eye out for people that were intelligent, people that could crunch numbers, that could move money around. And being that Shanita was a mortgage broker, she fit the bill to a T.
Now detectives wonder if Chanel also had a hand in planning her friend's demise.
Did Chanel have anything to do with it?
She didn't want to lose him. She didn't want her man to go to jail.
In the summer of 2002, police have charged 31-year-old Bryant Patterson for pulling the trigger in the brutal shooting of Shanita Glanville and her godson, Dane King. But Bryant claims it was all at the behest of his cousin, drug kingpin Maurice Phillips.
Bryant told the police, I did it for Maurice Phillips. That's who hired me to do it. And he paid me $18,000 to do this killing.
Maurice found out that Shanita, in essence, was a snitch. So he called Bryant and hired him to silence Shanita for good.
With more than enough evidence to take down Maurice, detectives only have one question remaining. Was Maurice's girlfriend, Chanel Cunningham, involved in the murder-for-hire plot? After all, Bryant did go to Chanel and Maurice's boutique after the murders to collect part of his earnings.
Maurice had given him the privy to go to Chanel's store and get $2,000 worth of goods for himself to make up for the other $2,000 of the $18,000 he was promised for the murder.
Unfortunately for police, Bryant doesn't seem to know much more about Chanel's involvement.
When he came into the store, he got what he wanted. He did, and he left.
After detectives arrive back in Philadelphia, police head to Chanel and Maurice's home with a search warrant in hand. The officers approach with caution.
They knew Maurice was dangerous. In order to get the power that he had, you had to be willing to do some dangerous things.
Maurice answers the door. And fortunately, he complies without incident. Chanel comes out just in time to see her man being cuffed, only to have the officers apprehend her next.
She knew when she was arrested that the only thing that she could do was cooperate with police, that her life of luxury and fantasy was over.
Back at the station, detectives speak to Maurice first.
They tell Maurice that they know that he had ordered the hit on Shanita. They have Bryant's confession and his role in murder for hire.
But Maurice isn't going down easy.
Maurice denies it. He says they're trying to throw him under the bus.
Maurice says that Bryant did this all on his own. He wasn't involved.
With Maurice refusing to cooperate, detectives book him on a myriad of charges.
Maurice is charged with murder for hire. He's charged with criminal conspiracy, money laundering, and distributing cocaine.
Next up is Chanel. Detectives are still unsure if she was involved in the double homicide and are hoping they can finally get the truth.
They were able to connect Chanel with the drug business, but they were never really able to connect her to the murder.
Detectives notice that when they bring up Shanita's death, Chanel becomes visibly upset.
Chanel, she always considered Shanita to be like an aunt to her. They were very close.
At that point, it turned realistic. This was no longer the fairy tale.
Chanel tells detectives she's ready to talk.
As much as she loved Maurice, she was ready to tell whatever they needed to know.
She says at first, she fell in love with Maurice's swagger, and at the time, didn't realize what he was involved in. But after a while, Maurice told Chanel the truth.
Small businesses were the front for a drug business.
Chanel admits that although she was surprised at first, she wasn't fazed.
By this time, Chanel didn't even care how he made his money. She was down for him, and she was down to help.
She loves Maurice, and she loves the lifestyle. So she's not going to give up on the love, and she's not going to give up on the lifestyle.
Chanel tells detectives she slowly got integrated into Maurice's drug business.
Chanel became completely engrossed in the business, And it wasn't just Maurice anymore. It was both of them involved in this criminal activity.
Chanel says that's when she offered a solution that she'll regret for the rest of her life.
Chanel loved Maurice so much that she was willing to not only risk her life, her freedom.
Summer 2002. Detectives have arrested Maurice Phillips and Chanel Cunningham for their role in a multi-million-dollar cocaine ring.
They are right on their heels of bringing down this drug conspiracy.
They believe Maurice paid his cousin, Bryant Patterson, to kill police informant Shanita Glanville.
Maurice tells Brian that he needed to get rid of Shanita before she could testify against him.
Unfortunately, Shanita wasn't the only one who suffered Maurice's wrath.
Bryant then turned the gun on the godson, Dane King.
With Bryant in custody and his confession in tow, detectives have what they need on Maurice. But they're still not sure if Chanel was involved in the hit on Shanita.
They can connect Chanel to the drug business, but they can't connect her to Shanita's death.
Fortunately, Chanel has decided to come clean and tell all.
She knows all she can do is cooperate and pray that they have leniency.
Chanel admits that she eventually became immersed in Maurice's drug business. And by the fall of 2000, their empire began soaring to new heights.
Their drug business was expanding, and they were making money exponentially. So much so that they kind of didn't know what to do with all the money that they were making.
They couldn't very well just walk into a bank and make millions of dollars in a deposit and expect no one to notice.
If you're living in a certain size house and you're driving a certain size car and you're paying certain size taxes, people start looking at your bank accounts.
That's when Chanel got an idea for a new recruit, her longtime family friend, Shanita Glanville.
Shanita Glanville was a successful mortgage broker. She was known for doing well in her business. She was known for crunching numbers.
Chanel and Shanita's relationship was really close. They loved each other. Shanita was pretty much an aunt towards Chanel.
Chanel knew that Shanita was exactly what Maurice would need to hide all of this illegal money they were making.
Chanel tells detectives when she made the proposal to Shanita, her friend was taken aback at first.
When Shanita heard these words, she couldn't believe that Chanel was wrapped up into something this major.
But when Chanel told Shanita how much money she would make, Shanita caved.
She agreed. As much as she was reluctant at first, she was looking at the green.
Chanel tells detectives, from that point on, she and Shanita worked together to strengthen the ring's cover.
They would create false documents, W-2s, anything to make the drug operation look as legitimate as possible.
They were buying properties and selling properties with false institutions that they owned.
Chanel says things were going well once Shanita got involved. That is, until Maurice caught wind of the raid at Shanita's house.
Maurice has been in this game a long time before he met Chanel. And so the people that he works with know people who know people.
When Maurice suspected that Shanita was the informant, he was furious.
Maurice told Chanel that if Shanita flipped on them, it would be Chanel's fault, since she's the one who brought Shanita into the business.
Maurice now wants Chanel to go and confront Shanita and ask her, are you cooperating? Are you telling on us? Are you squealing on us?
Chanel loved Maurice. And Chanel was willing to do anything for her man. She did as Maurice requested her to do. She went over, she talked to Shanita.
She demanded to know if Shanita had said anything about Chanel and Maurice's operation.
Shanita, she was absolutely frantic that Maurice knew about the raid.
She's scared out of her mind because she knows what Maurice is capable of.
Chanel says Shanita was hysterical, adamantly denying the allegations. And Chanel believed her.
She called Maurice on the phone and said, I just confronted her. She's not involved in ratting on us. She's still with us.
She tried to talk Maurice down, and she thought that she did.
He told her, okay, I'm not going to do anything to her.
Chanel said after that, she thought everything was squashed. She believed Shanita, and she thought that Maurice did too.
But a few days later, Chanel and Maurice got word from an associate that Shanita hadn't been honest with them.
He flew off the handle.
She knew the love that he had for her. And when it came down to the business, there is no love.
In the summer of 2002, police are speaking with 29-year-old Chanel Cunningham about her role in an extensive drug ring led by her kingpin boyfriend, Maurice Phillips. Detectives believe Maurice is also behind a murder-for-hire scheme that left 2 people dead, including Chanel's best friend, Shanita Glanville.
You've got Bryant, the guy that carried out the murder for hire, who's willing to testify that Maurice orchestrated it.
There's just one question remaining. Was Chanel involved in her friend's murder?
They know that Chanel is involved in the drug dealing, but they don't know if she's at all implicated in the murder of her friend Shanita.
Chanel tells detectives that a few weeks before the murder, Maurice ordered her to confront Shanita after he got wind of the raid at her house.
Chanel had come to her and confronted her.
When her friend denied working with police, she believed her.
Chanel called Maurice and told Maurice that she didn't betray them at all.
But the situation was far from over. A few days later, Maurice told Chanel that he found out Shanita had lied to her.
That must have been chilling when he told her that.
Chanel was shocked. She was afraid of Maurice.
Chanel knew Maurice was furious, but she loved him. She didn't want to think that he was capable of doing this to her friend.
Chanel says she thought about warning Shanita that Maurice had found out the truth, but didn't want to cross her man.
She's kind of torn between her friendship and her love for her man.
Chanel says on June 25th, Maurice told her that his cousin was going to retrieve some merchandise from their store.
When Bryant went to pick up his $2,000 in luxury items at the boutique, Chanel had no knowledge of why Maurice was being so generous. She no way thought that Bryant arrived in Philly from Tennessee to kill her best friend.
But later, Maurice unleashed his dirty secret.
Maurice told her what had happened. Shanita was dead.
Said, babe, I had to do this for us. You know, it was either her or us.
Chanel was devastated, but she tried not to show it.
Chanel says that after Maurice confessed, although she was shocked, they never spoke about it again. And she admitted that she still loved him.
This was a man she had been with for years. She didn't want to lose him.
Chanel says she regrets not coming forward to police. But most of all, she regrets that she didn't warn her friend.
Chanel tells police that she felt remorse for Shanita's death. She feels ashamed that she didn't say anything sooner.
Even though Chanel had nothing to do with her friend's murder, she's still charged with a plethora of crimes regarding her involvement in the drug organization.
She's charged with conspiracy to distribute cocaine, transactional money laundering, and aiding and abetting.
In January of 2010, Maurice's trial gets underway in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Chanel Cunningham is the prosecution's star witness.
Chanel decided to testify against Maurice because this is not how she wanted it to end. Yes, she loved Maurice, but she also loved Shanita, and Shanita was dead.
Bryant Patterson also testifies against Maurice. And the kingpin is ultimately found guilty.
He receives 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
For their cooperation, Chanel and Bryant are given leniency by the court.
Chanel Cunningham receives 12 years after pleading guilty for money laundering and drug conspiracy.
As for triggerman Bryant Patterson, he walks away with the least time of the 3.
After pleading guilty for murder for hire, Brian Patterson receives 9 years and 4 months.
People were shocked and angry after hearing Brian Patterson's sentencing.
The family was outraged at the fact that he got this little bit of time for double murder.
Life is just absolutely invaluable. So when you're at that crossroads between love and life, choose life.
Being in love can make you feel like you have everything you'll ever need. It can make you look away, even when the one you love hurts the people who are most important to you. But love doesn't always last forever. And when it's gone, and you've turned your back on your true friends, who will you turn to then? When life has been cruel, it feels like a breath of fresh air when someone comes along to take care of you and make you feel safe. The euphoria of love impairs the senses and strips away vulnerabilities. But if you stop listening to your instincts, that same love could end up suffocating you, overruling your sound judgment, and costing you everything. July 3rd, 2009. It's a muggy summer night in Augusta, Georgia, as residents try to get some rest before the impending holiday.
Augusta has like a small town feel. Quaint, normally quiet town.
Augusta is a great city. It's very family oriented. It's 2 hours away from the mountains, 2 hours away from the beaches.
On the north side of town, Roger Campbell is settling in for the evening around 11:40 p.m.
He's getting ready for bed. He hears a noise outside.
And it's soon clear the commotion isn't July 4th fireworks.
As he was walking towards the window, he was hearing screams as well.
He sees several men running from the house across the street. Seconds later, he sees a young woman running and screaming.
In the doorway of the residence, Roger sees something else that makes his heart stop.
He sees a man laying on the floor, and it looks like his neighbor, Miguel Hernandez.
Roger grabs his phone and immediately calls 911.
He tells police they need to get there right away, and that it looks like his neighbor is seriously injured.
First responders race to the scene.
They know they don't have much time if they want to save this man's life.
But what police don't yet know is that there's an unsuspecting young girl at the center of this crime. One who hasn't even celebrated her 18th birthday yet. As a young child, Cassietta Felton was given a stable, structured life.
I got raised with my grandparents, actually. I didn't live with my parents. It was like church every Sunday, school every day. You're not missing a day of school.
Cassietta received a lot of discipline and structure, but it was a lot of love. And she appreciated it all. She went to a great school. They lived in a wonderful neighborhood, and she just really loved being with her grandmother.
But the structured upbringing Cassietta had become accustomed to eventually came crashing down.
My grandmother got sick at the age I was 12 and a half, going on 13.
Eventually, her grandmother was too ill to care for her. So she moves in with her mother and her mother's boyfriend.
It really broke my heart that I had to go back because I didn't want to go back. My mother was living in a rough neighborhood that you call the hood.
There was a stark comparison between the life that she had with her grandmother compared to the new life she has with her mother.
Her boyfriend was an alcoholic. He did drugs. At the age of 13 and a half, he started doing some unusual stuff, like touching me.
Cassietta decided she couldn't stay at her mother's home any longer.
I packed my things and I left.
She couldn't no longer take the sexual abuse. She needed to leave in order to find safety. She didn't know where she was going, but she felt like the streets would be better than living in a home being sexually abused.
I went from house to house. I barely ate. Sometimes I ate, sometimes I didn't. It's some people that I hung around, and that was women that were older than me. They was leading me in the wrong direction. Like going to the club with fake IDs, doing drugs, having sex for money, just to survive because I was only 13.
After 2 years of surviving on her own, Cassietta finally got a welcome request from her mother.
Her mother was no longer with her abusive boyfriend, and her mother asked her if she would come home.
When my mom decided to leave her boyfriend, all she said was, "I want you to come home."
Although Cassietta was happy to get out of the street life, she still had very mixed emotions toward her mother. Because for 2 years, she lived on the street, trying to navigate life, trying to fend for herself.
So when I got home, it got better. But that hurt was still inside of me.
After everything she'd been through, Cassietta took on a protector role over her younger siblings.
When she came back, it was like she never left. Cassietta was fun, loving, a sister that was just everything. She made sure we were okay. She was like a second mom when my mom wasn't there.
And Cassietta would soon find someone she thought could be her protector. It all started one sunny day in the spring of 2008.
One day, she was like, "Let's walk to the store." And I was like, "Okay, let's go."
Every time we went to the store, we would walk in this neighborhood. So we just walking. And the next thing you know, these boys was trying to talk to me. And I was just like, I'm trying to go to the store. I don't have time.
But there was one young man who caught Cassietta's attention.
So he was boy out there cutting grass, dirty, everything. I thought he was cute. So that's who I wanted to talk to.
The young man mowing the lawn was 16-year-old Brandon Steplight. Cassietta could not take her eyes off of Brandon.
I could tell that we really liked each other because we both was nervous. And it took us a little minute to exchange numbers. And we kept smiling at each other. Like we could both feel that connection.
After that day, Cassietta and Brandon became inseparable.
Me and Brandon started off as friends, and as we started spending more time together, that's when our connection started getting even deeper. He stayed with his uncle, I stayed with my mom. I wouldn't never do no cooking. He would do all the cooking. So I would just eat and he cooked. And that's just how we connected, you know? We would be around each other like every day.
Cassietta introduced Brandon to her family, and they fell in love with him almost as quickly as she did. And on the surface, it seemed that Brandon was like gonna be the best influence.
Brandon was Cassie's knight in shining armor. In my mind, I was like, maybe he's a good match for her. Maybe she'll grow up, you know, become the woman that she really needs to be with him, and they can just rule the world together.
No one foresaw just how differently things would actually go.
She had no idea how much trouble Brandon was about to rope her into.
I just heard a whole bunch of commotion. Then I heard one gunshot.
At 16 years old, Cassietta Felton thought she'd finally found happiness after a life of struggle and abuse.
Cassietta was back in school. She was amongst her peers. She was doing well. She was flourishing.
It was around this time that she began dating Brandon Steplight, who was also 16 years old.
Cassietta and Brandon had two different beginnings. Cassietta lived in low-income housing, come from an impoverished environment. Brandon, he grew up as a suburban kid. So they did have differences, but it didn't stop their connection from growing.
Brandon was loving and supporting of Cassietta and her entire family.
It would be times to where we really wouldn't have no food, and Brandon would get up and go get food for the whole house to make sure we eat and everything.
But Brandon would soon show another side of himself when his own cash flow began to dwindle. July 3rd, 2009. Augusta police have just arrived on the scene of a late-night shooting where 30-year-old Miguel Hernandez has been found unresponsive.
Miguel Hernandez was found shot to death. He was killed by a single gunshot wound to the chest.
As CSI combed the scene for clues, detectives turned to the neighbor who called 911, Roger Campbell.
So they did interview Roger Campbell there at the scene. Campbell tells them that he heard the gunshot, went out to investigate, to look to possibly see what happened, and as he's doing this, he sees several Hispanic males running from the scene, along with an African-American female.
Roger says he didn't recognize any of the individuals he saw running from the home.
Unfortunately, the identity of these people was still a mystery at that point.
And to make matters worse for police, they don't find any useful evidence in their sweep of the home.
There was little forensic evidence at the scene of the crime, so the detectives didn't have much to go on.
It's not until the next morning, as Augusta residents begin celebrating the July 4th holiday, that detectives get their first big break in the case.
A man named Oscar White walks into the sheriff's department and wants to speak to someone about the case.
Oscar says he was there that night, but he had been too afraid to come forward until now.
The reason for Oscar's hesitancy gives detectives pause.
It was a party with an underage girl who was being paid to dance for them.
He knew he could get in big trouble for coming forward, but he also wanted to get justice for his friend Miguel.
Cops suspect the underage girl must be the same girl Roger Campbell saw running from the scene.
Oscar tells detectives that on the night of the murder, he and his friends had been having a great time until a sudden knock at the door changed everything.
Miguel Hernandez went to go answer it.
Once Hernandez opens the door, is confronted with this man.
The man had a gun and demanded money.
Hernandez says, "I'm not going to." A gunshot goes off, and it appears that Hernandez is hit, falls back into the floor and collapses.
Oscar said that once Miguel was shot, chaos erupted in the house. He said that everyone started screaming and running, and the robber ran away as well.
Detectives asked Oscar to provide them with the names of the other individuals at the party that night, including the underage dancer.
Oscar says the dancer was a friend of Miguel's, but he didn't know her name.
After they let Oscar leave, they contacted the other party goers to try to corroborate his statement.
The other men confirmed the incident appeared to be the result of a robbery gone wrong. But none of them are able to provide the name of the young dancer.
Something seems fishy about this to investigators. Either they really didn't know her name, or they were trying to cover themselves from getting in trouble from being at a party with an underage girl.
Either way, detectives are nowhere nearer to discovering the identity of the masked gunman. They blast the story out into the press, hoping someone will come forward that knows something.
They knew there had to be someone out there who knew what happened. They just had to find that person.
On July 12th, police are in luck.
They received a call from a neighboring law enforcement agency stating that one of the inmates had possible information on the murder of Miguel Hernandez.
The young man name was Ethan Cruz. He was arrested in a neighboring city for unrelated crime.
Augusta detectives head to the facility where Ethan is being held to follow up on this promising lead. Ethan agrees to tell police what he knows if they'll reward him with a lighter sentence.
After consulting with prosecutors and investigators, they agreed to these terms. They were desperate at this point.
Ethan said that he had been hanging out with his friend, Brandon Steplight, when Brandon said he needed to get something off of his chest.
Ethan asked him what was wrong, and that's when Brandon said that he had shot and killed a Hispanic man a few weeks earlier.
According to Ethan, that's all Brandon wanted to say about the incident. He didn't really give him any more info.
When Ethan heard of Miguel Hernandez's murder, he knew that that must have been the guy that Brandon was talking about.
Armed with their first solid lead, investigators put out an APB for Brandon Steplight.
They were surprised to discover that the suspect was only 16 years old.
And police don't have to look far to find the teen.
They learned that Brandon Steplight had been living in the basement of his uncle's home.
Brandon stayed with his uncle. He had the house to himself more often because his uncle always worked.
Police move in to make an arrest, but Brandon isn't the only person they find at the home.
All I heard was, get on the ground, get on the ground, get on the ground.
Innovation usually looks something like this. But what if it didn't? What if it looked like a family truck that powers a family home? Or an ordinary drive made extraordinary? Let's change what innovation looks like. From floating around in your own personal space capsule up here to what we could build for all Americans down here.
As a DJ, I know all about customization. That's why I love Liberty Mutual. They customize my car insurance, so I only pay for what I need.
How about a throwback?
You got it.
I'll settle for something I can dance to.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
At Capella University, we know the world is pretty smart.
Wicked smart.
So we made FlexPath smart enough that you can finish the bachelor's degree in business you've started in 18 months for $18,000. That's smart. Capella University. Don't just learn smarter.
I told you I was going to win.
With Windows 11, gaming performs to another level.
Let's go.
And when it comes to streaming movies, we haven't really experienced any buffering. It's so cool that we'll have access to movie theater level quality pretty much anywhere.
Seeing it load up that quick, I was genuinely surprised.
I can't believe there's no lag. I didn't realize how bad you were until I got these really good graphics.
When I met Brandon that day, I was really just trying to change my life. I was trying to do a whole turnaround. So boys really went on my mind then. But Brandon wasn't paying attention. He didn't look our way. He was like, he meant business by cutting that grass. And I was like, I need a boyfriend like that. Because all the rest of them, they just thirsty. And they probably just don't want number one thing. So I said, I'm gonna talk to him. Never knew something bad was going to happen.
On July 13th, 2009, Augusta police have the home of 16-year-old murder suspect Brandon Steplight surrounded.
Brandon was wanted for the murder of 30-year-old Miguel Hernandez.
Brandon lived with his uncle, but his uncle was usually away at work during the day.
Officers order Brandon to come outside with his hands up.
Officers did not want to go inside and have him to face someone in a home, possibly armed.
The door slowly swings open, and police come face to face with Brandon. But they quickly realize he's not alone.
He had a young girl with him who identified herself as Brandon's girlfriend, 16-year-old Cassietta Felton.
All I heard was, get on the ground, get on the ground, get on the ground. When I looked at Brandon looked like he wanted to run. I was like, don't run because they're gonna shoot you.
Cassietta saw how terrified Brandon was, and she could see on his face his desire to run. She begged and pleaded with him to follow the officer's instructions because she didn't want anything to happen to him.
Fortunately, Brandon heeded his girlfriend's warning.
Brandon surrendered himself peacefully and was taken into custody.
They cuffed Brandon up, put Brandon in the car, and then they got me.
Police asked Cassietta to come down to the station with them to answer some questions, and she agrees.
Since she seemed to be hiding out at Brandon's house with him, they figured he may have told her something about the shooting.
We got in the car, we went down to the police station. They placed me in one interrogation room, they placed him in one interrogation room.
Detectives tell Brandon Oscar's account of that night and also tell him that they believe that this was a premeditated robbery attempt.
To their surprise, Brandon admits to being there that night. He's ready to tell them everything.
Brandon is young, scared, and he just wants this to be over with. Brandon said that it all started when he had been hanging out with his girlfriend, Cassietta Felton, earlier that day.
They had been talking about doing a robbery for some quick cash and thought Miguel and his friends were the perfect targets.
Cassietta knew Miguel from her time living on the streets, and she also knew that his friends hired girls to dance at parties.
The plan was for Cassietta to distract the men by dancing for them, and then Brandon would bust in and hold them at gunpoint.
But things didn't go as planned.
Once Brandon got the signal from Cassietta, he approached the door, but it was locked.
Cassietta was supposed to leave the door unlocked so Brandon could walk right in, but she seemed to have forgotten. He decided he would just have to knock and hope that Cassietta would be the one to answer.
The thing is, Cassietta wasn't even in the room at that time.
Brandon began banging on the door, and seconds later, Miguel answered. But that's when all hell broke loose.
Suddenly, Miguel lunged at him, and he wasn't expecting that.
Steplight's statement to law enforcement was that he shot him in self-defense.
Brandon was so in shock that he fled the scene without taking any money, and without Cassietta.
He was so frightened that he essentially left her behind to fend for herself in all the chaos.
Detectives asked Brandon where he hid the weapon.
He says a couple days later, he sold the gun for $50 to a white male he only knew as Ghost.
Thanks to Brandon's statement, investigators now know that his girlfriend, Cassietta Felton, is the mysterious dancer from the party that night. They're eager to speak with her next, to see if her story lines up with Brandon's.
When they came to me, they asked me what was going on. So I told them I wasn't talking without appearing in the garden. So they stepped out, the police stepped out of the interrogation room. I guess called my parents, that's what they say. Next thing I know, they come back in the interrogation room with me. I still don't know what's going on with Brandon because we in separate interrogation rooms.
That's when investigators drop a bombshell on Cassietta.
They revealed to her that Brandon has told them everything.
They was trying to use against me, oh, Brandon said you did it, Brandon said this.
But would Cassietta's version of events be the same?
Like, y'all actually saying that I did this when I didn't do this?
Police knew someone wasn't telling them the truth.
On July 13th, 2009, 16-year-old Cassietta Felton is being interrogated by Augusta police for her connection to the shooting death of 30-year-old Miguel Hernandez.
Cassietta's boyfriend, Brandon Steplight, has already admitted to being the shooter, but he claims that she was in on the whole thing with him and helped him plan it out.
Cassietta finds herself in an interrogation room with detectives telling her that she set up Miguel to be robbed and murdered.
When detectives tell Cassietta that her man has thrown her under the bus, she's in shock.
They asked me like, we know you did it, and stuff like that. Getting smart, they talking to me any kind of way. So finally I just get frustrated. Like, y'all actually saying that I did this when I didn't do this? I kept saying I didn't do it.
Instead, Cassietta tells an entirely different story.
According to Cassietta, there was no plan to rob anyone. She does admit that her and Brandon were in need of some quick cash, but robbery was never in their plan.
Cassietta says Brandon knew she used to dance for money when she was living on the streets, and it gave him an idea.
Brandon tells Cassietta, well, what if you start dancing again?
Cassietta really didn't want to go back to this situation, but she was aware that this was an easy way for her to be able to attain the money that they needed.
She had danced for some men before at this apartment, and she felt like she could go back and do it again. She didn't really want to do it, but if he felt that they really needed it, then she would do it.
Brandon was her everything, and she wanted to show up and protect him like he had protected her. So she reluctantly agreed. On July 3rd, she went there to see if there was a chance that she could dance again for money.
The men accepted Cassietta's offer and invited her inside.
There was only one person that I knew in that apartment, which was Miguel. So when I went and danced, it was just supposed to be me dancing, getting my money, and leaving.
But nothing that evening would go as planned.
So everything was fine. Everything was okay. Miguel went to the bathroom. When Miguel went to the bathroom, one of the men had touched me a certain way. And I asked the man to stop touching me. He was very aggressive and mean with it.
All of the sexual abuse and the exploitation that she experienced on the streets as a child came flooding back.
Cassietta left the room and immediately called Brandon.
And I told Brandon, like, listen, I'm uncomfortable. I don't feel right. Something is just not right.
Seconds later, Cassietta heard a ruckus coming from the living room.
All I heard was English and Spanish. And I just heard a whole bunch of commotion. Then I heard one gunshot.
Cassietta says she rushed back into the living room to see what happened.
People are yelling and screaming and running.
My friend Miguel is laying on the floor. I just kept telling him to breathe, and I just wanted him to live.
Even though she wanted to stay with Miguel and get him help, she got swept up with the others. Everyone is scared. No one knows who has a gun or who might get shot next, so Cassietta runs.
I left. Then the next thing I know, on the way going out, I can hear the sirens.
Cassietta ran all the way home.
When I got home, I was covered in sweat, tears, and everything. Like, I was just so scared.
And she was surprised to see Brandon there, waiting for her.
We were talking, and I was like, I was there in that apartment. I was like, that was my friend Miguel that got hurt. I don't know if he survived or he died. And then that's when Brandon started saying, like, I'm scared, I'm scared and I don't know what to do. So at that point, I'm thinking in my head, like, we were both there the whole time.
That's when it really sunk in that Brandon was the shooter.
July of 2009. Augusta detectives are sitting down with 16-year-old Cassietta Felton, who's being questioned for her part in a robbery gone wrong that led to the death of 30-year-old Miguel Hernandez.
Cassietta's boyfriend, Brandon Steplight, has already admitted to being the shooter. But her story is pretty different than his.
Brandon said that he and Cassietta had come up with this elaborate robbery plot, but Cassietta denies this.
She claimed she had no idea anyone was going to be robbed, let alone shot.
I thought that I was gonna be able to get there and dance and they pay me my money and I leave. But it didn't happen like that.
Cassietta tells detectives that she was completely taken aback when she learned what her man had done.
I was young, I was scared, and I was mostly hurt because someone had lost their life over nothing. I felt like real bad. Like, I even feel bad to this day now because I feel like I could have saved him. Miguel wasn't supposed to die.
The next day, Cassietta's mother could tell something was wrong.
I was in my room. I was kind of like distanced once that happened. So it's like when a mother they know their child, like when something is going on. She came in the room. She was like, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay, Mama.
Cassietta decided to be honest with her mother about what happened.
She said, I know you didn't kill nobody. She said, but I was wrong place at the wrong time and just made a really messed up decision. She said, just know that I love you, you're my child, but this situation here, I can't bring you out of. She said, I'm gonna be there the whole way, but I can't bring you out of this situation. She said, so just be prepared for it. And then she walked out.
Not knowing what else to do, Cassietta says she and Brandon decided to lay low at his uncle's house until police arrived 10 days later.
I was scared, I was afraid. I didn't know what to do because I felt like me and Brandon was gonna be gone for the rest of our life.
Despite Cassietta's insistence that she was an innocent bystander in the crime, police charge her with first-degree murder.
When the story came out that Cassie got arrested and she'll be going to prison, it was hard. It was like, no, we're just gonna be here to support her and do what we can.
I had 5 charges on me. I had first-degree murder. I had aggravated assault. I had firearm during the commission of a crime. I had armed robbery. And I had attempted armed robbery.
Brandon Steplight was also charged with the same exact offenses as Cassietta.
Cassietta struggles to adapt to life behind bars as she awaits trial.
As her case makes its way through court, Cassietta turns 17. That means she's transferred out of the juvenile facility and into the county jail with adult inmates.
She is afraid for her future. She doesn't know what's going to happen to Brandon, and he has been everything to her. But she's also grieving the loss of Miguel, who was her friend.
My first lawyer was a woman. She was rude. She really didn't care. Every day she comes to visit me, she would tell me, oh, you know, if you find guilty, you're gonna be looking at life plus 45. My mother's sitting there crying. So finally, I just lost it. I was like, I don't want you as a lawyer. I will find another lawyer. And I told my mama to stop crying. It's gonna be all right as long as we got God in our lives.
But was everything really going to be all right for Cassietta? With her story differing from Brandon's, it would be up to the court to decide who was really telling the truth.
She was facing serious time. She might be spending what are supposed to be the best years of her life in prison.
2 black kids, somebody died. All they worry about is sentencing somebody, putting them away. I did not shoot Miguel. I didn't want Miguel to be shot. I just wanted him to live throughout the situation. Miguel wasn't supposed to die. It still eats up my conscience. I just want God to forgive me. I want Miguel to forgive me. I just want everybody to forgive me. His family to forgive me of what happened to him because it wasn't supposed to happen.
July 2009. 16-year-old Cassietta Felton and her boyfriend, Brandon Steplight, have both been charged with the murder of 30-year-old Miguel Hernandez.
Investigators decide to charge both of the teenagers as adults.
Brandon has admitted to investigators' version of the event, that this whole thing is the result of a robbery gone wrong.
Cassietta, however, has told a different story.
According to Cassietta, there was never a plan to rob, and she had no idea Brandon was going to shoot Miguel.
Prosecutors aren't buying Cassietta's version of events.
Once prosecutors had the opportunity to compare the various witness stories and statements, they believe that Cassietta went to the party knowing that Brandon intended on robbing the guests. And to them, that makes her equally culpable in the eyes of the law.
State's attorneys decide to offer Cassietta a deal.
He came to me, he said, well, The DA want to drop all your charges and just offer you attempted armed robbery. The judge will decide 1 through 25 to sentence you.
But in order for Cassietta to get the reduced sentence, she has to plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter.
So I was just so tired and exhausted and just ready to get it over with. I had already been sitting in the county for like a year and some change. I talked to my mother. My mother said, well, Cassietta is better than having first-degree murder and all the other charges. So I went on and took the voluntary manslaughter. I really didn't have no choice.
Brandon also makes a deal with prosecutors and agrees to plead guilty to first-degree murder.
He was in court with me. We stand up to get sentenced. They placed us in front of the judge. The judge said, Cassietta Felton, read the charges. I give you a 15-12. Then he turned to Brandon and said, Brandon, Giselle Steplight, I give you 30 with parole.
To this day, Cassietta denies the version of events Brandon told investigators.
2 black kids, somebody died. All they worry about is sentencing somebody, putting them away, and that's it.
She believes that Brandon was under duress while being questioned by investigators, and that's why he admitted to everything.
Well, Brandon told me why he confessed. He said that he made a mistake in his life. It wasn't on purpose. He didn't mean for that to happen. He said, I need to be a man and own up to my responsibilities and do what I need to do.
Once in prison, Cassietta continued to grieve the loss of her friend, her freedom, and her man.
So when it came to the beginning of my sentence, I stayed in trouble all the time. And when you go to prison, you have to defend yourself. You have to fight, because if you don't, they're never gonna respect you.
She spent most of her first 6 years in lockdown.
But after those 6 years behind bars, Cassietta realized she needed to make a change.
That's who brought me through it. That's who got me through it. It was God.
Cassietta decided to stop fighting and start pursuing her GED.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna enroll myself in GED class. It'll be helpful for me because I really need it, for myself. And then maybe when I get home, I could teach my brothers and sisters,
She would email me, good morning, I done read my Bible, I'm getting my GED, I done passed my classes. And when she told me that, I run to my mama, look, Cassie said she didn't pass her English and her math.
Thanks to her newfound good behavior, Cassietta was released from prison a few years early, on September 14th, 2020.
Cassietta was released from prison 2 weeks before her 28th birthday.
I did almost 11 and a half years in prison. When I first got released that day, I got me a pack of Newports, got me a Snicker bar, an ice cream. I laid back on the concrete. I fired the cigarette up, and I was just looking at the sky, just crying. I was like, I'm free. I just kept saying I'm free.
Today, Cassietta is working and spending time with her family.
I have had 2 jobs since I've been out, and right now I'm just really focused on me, adapting back to society, getting used back, to the real world.
Her life has changed marvelously, and everything is on the right track.
As Cassietta moves on with her life, she is staying out of trouble, but still communicates with Brandon.
At 16, I really loved Brandon, and I still love Brandon.
She's still in contact with him while he's serving his sentence, and she hopes that one day they can be together again.
Brandon was the one person that protected her, that showed up for her. He was there for her when she didn't have any money, when she didn't have anything to eat. And seeing that he needed money, She wanted to be there for him just like he had been there for her.
If I could turn back the heads of time, I wouldn't even been there. I would have just stayed at home.
If anyone sees Cassietta's story, I want them to understand that love is powerful and love can make you do some crazy things.
I hope that younger girls, they learn to stay away from negativity, stay away from violence, stay away from people that are not good for them, because it's easy to get in trouble and it's hard to get out of.
When you put your full trust in someone, it can be a slippery slope. Especially when you're young, it's hard to know what's best and to follow your conscience. But if you don't remember to listen closely, you could end up in a dark place you never expected.